The AI project sounds important. The business wants it. The executive wants speed. Developers see technical risk. DBAs see data problems. Security sees exposure. Infrastructure sees support burden. The project manager sees scope chaos. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone may even be correct from their own perspective, but nobody is completely sure who has the authority to advance the project, stop it, override an objection, or accept ownership when the experiment becomes a real enterprise system. Enterprise AI governance fails when everyone has opinions, but nobody has clear decision rights. Ownership has to be designed. Enterprise AI creates an ownership problem almost immediately. A conventional business application may already involve executives, business users, developers, database teams, security, infrastructure, quality assurance, project management, and support. AI adds even more ambiguity because the work touches business judgment, data quality, model behavior, user trust, governance, cost, workflow change, and production risk. So when an AI initiative begins, everyone has a legitimate point of view. The executive wants business value and speed. The department owner wants the workflow improved. The developer wants something buildable, integrated, and maintainable. The DBA wants usable, governed data. Security wants risk controlled. Legal and compliance want exposure understood. Infrastructure wants something that can be deployed, monitored, supported, and recovered. The project manager wants scope, dependencies, evidence, and decisions documented. None of those concerns are wrong. The problem is that they are different concerns. If the organization does not define how those perspectives affect decisions, the project becomes political by default. People begin assuming authority based on title, budget, urgency, technical control, or proximity to the business problem. The department may assume it owns the decision because it owns the workflow. IT may assume it owns the decision because it owns the system. Security may assume every objection is an automatic veto. Executives may assume enthusiasm and funding authority are enough to override the process. That is how confusion enters the system. The worst version is the AI committee, where everyone talks, nobody owns the decision, and projects move through momentum rather than evidence. A project moves forward because people are excited. Then it stops because someone raises an important concern late. Then it restarts because an executive pushes. Then it stalls again because the production team does not accept ownership. That is not governance. That is organizational drift. A serious enterprise AI operating model defines how authority works before the project is in trouble. It defines who contributes evidence, who evaluates the initiative, who approves advancement, who can raise a formal blocker, who can authorize an override, who documents the decision, and who owns the next stage. The central principle is simple. Different roles should influence different decisions. Management should not score alone. Developers should not decide business value alone. Security should not define the business case. Business owners should not ignore technical, data, and operational reality. Enterprise AI works better when the decision structure is explicit before disagreement becomes expensive. Vague ownership usually looks manageable at the beginning. The first meetings go well. The business problem sounds real. The executive sponsor wants momentum. The department is willing to participate. The technical team believes a prototype may be possible. Security may not object because the design is still vague. Then the project starts moving. That is when the different forms of truth begin to appear. Executives want visible AI progress because the organization needs measurable wins. Departments want their use cases prioritized because their workflow pain is immediate. Developers discover integration gaps, brittle legacy systems, missing APIs, unclear requirements, licensing constraints, and maintainability risk. DBAs discover incomplete data, inconsistent fields, undocumented business rules, reporting dependencies, and data preparation work that nobody estimated. Security discovers data movement, access control, privacy, identity, vendor logging, and audit concerns. Infrastructure discovers deployment, monitoring, backup, patching, secrets management, scaling, support, and recovery requirements. Project managers discover unstable scope, unclear owners, unscheduled dependencies, and decisions that were discussed but never formally made. This does not necessarily mean the initiative is bad. It means the initiative is enterprise work. Enterprise work naturally creates trade-offs. Speed competes with control. Innovation competes with supportability. Department value competes with platform consistency. AI capability competes with data readiness. Executive urgency competes with operational reality. If the enterprise AI operating model does not define how those trade-offs are handled, every new problem triggers another negotiation. A team may begin building before the data has been approved. A department may assume an MVP is almost production. Security may discover a non-bypassable issue after the demonstration. Infrastructure may reject the proposed deployment model. The receiving application team may refuse handoff because the project is not mature enough to own responsibly. At that point, everyone can claim they were right, and they may all be right from their own viewpoint. The solution is not to silence those viewpoints. The solution is to structure them inside the operating model. The model should say, who provides input? Who evaluates which dimension? Who owns the gate decision? Who can identify a formal stop condition? Who can authorize an exception? Who records the reasoning? Who owns the initiative after it advances? The practical rule is this: AI governance should expose conflict early, not discover it at handoff. The AI innovation team should not be treated as a brainstorming club. It should not exist only to collect ideas, watch vendor demonstrations, run hackathons, or celebrate prototypes. In a serious enterprise AI operating model, the AI innovation team is a cross-functional decision and governance body. Its job is to run the front end of the enterprise AI portfolio. It helps discover opportunities. It organizes them into a usable backlog. It evaluates, scores, and ranks them. It selects candidates for deeper investigation. It reviews evidence from prototype and MVP work. It updates assumptions after each learning cycle. It reevaluates the initiative against the rest of the portfolio, and it determines whether the initiative should continue, hold, be rescoped, be downgraded, be shelved, advance, or move toward handoff. That is very different from simply asking, what AI ideas do we have? The AI innovation team is valuable because enterprise AI decisions require several different forms of truth. The business understands the workflow and the operational pain. Management understands strategic priorities, budget, and capital allocation. Developers understand implementation feasibility and architecture. DBAs and data leads understand whether the required data actually exists and what it will take to make that data usable. Security, legal, and compliance understand risk boundaries. Infrastructure, DevOps, and QA understand deployment and support reality. Project management understands process discipline, dependencies, gate readiness, and decision logging. No single role has the complete answer, but there is an important boundary. The AI innovation team should not automatically become the long-term owner of every AI system it helps validate. That is a common failure mode. The innovation group proves something, keeps ownership too long, and slowly becomes responsible for unsupported semi-products. Production teams remain outside the process until the handoff becomes painful. The builders who should be investigating the next high-ranked opportunity are instead maintaining systems that never completed a proper ownership transition. That is backwards. The AI innovation team should govern movement through the enterprise AI operating model. It should not become a dumping ground for everything related to AI. Its purpose is to help the enterprise choose better, validate faster, stop weaker work earlier, and hand proven initiatives to dedicated delivery teams. The short version is this: the AI innovation team owns the decision process. It does not own every production system. That distinction keeps innovation moving while preserving enterprise delivery discipline. A usable decision rights model begins with realistic roles. Not every organization will use the same titles. Some companies will combine roles, others will divide them across several teams. But the enterprise AI operating model still needs to cover the same responsibilities. The first role is the executive sponsor. This person owns strategic fit, funding authority, capital allocation, and final business escalation decisions. The executive sponsor should not be the only voice, but someone must own the enterprise's commitment to spend money, allocate people, and accept business trade-offs. The second role is the department owner or subject matter expert. This is the business side owner of the workflow, pain point, or use case. This role validates whether the initiative solves a real problem, fits the department, produces meaningful value, and has a plausible adoption path. The third role is the AI innovation team facilitator or project manager. This person runs the process. The facilitator owns meeting flow, artifact completeness, score collection, decision logging, stage gate administration, review cadence, and process discipline. The facilitator does not own every strategic decision, but the facilitator ensures that the enterprise follows the decision process it claimed to adopt. Then come the technical, data, governance, and operational roles. The developer or solution architect contributes implementation reality. Can this be built? Can it integrate with the existing environment? Does the proposed design fit enterprise architecture? Are the selected tools viable? Will the solution remain maintainable after the demonstration? The DBA or data lead contributes data reality. Is the data available? Is it usable? Is it governed? What preparation is required? Where does the source data live? Which business rules are undocumented? What constraints affect feasibility, cost, and timing? The security, legal, and compliance reviewer contributes governance reality. Is the proposed data use permitted? Are there privacy or regulatory concerns? Does the system require controls that are missing? Are there requirements that cannot be bypassed? The infrastructure, DevOps, and QA lead contributes operational reality. Can the solution be deployed, monitored, tested, secured, supported, maintained, scaled, and recovered? Finally, the dedicated product or application team lead becomes critical when the initiative approaches production development. That team must determine whether it can responsibly accept ownership. This matters because handoff is not a compliment. It is not merely leadership saying, "The MVP looks good." Handoff is an operational commitment. The receiving team inherits responsibility for completing, hardening, deploying, supporting, and maintaining the system. Each role sees something different. That is the point. The enterprise AI operating model should not flatten these perspectives into generic consensus. It should preserve the different lenses and define how each one affects the decision. ARACI-style artifact may be used to document who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. But the artifact is not the operating model. It is one tool used to make the operating model's decision rights visible. The stronger principle is this: the role closest to the risk should have formal input into that risk. That is how enterprise AI avoids predictable blind spots. Enterprise AI decision rights should not remain identical throughout the life of an initiative. Authority changes as the initiative moves through the operating model. Discovery is not prototype. Prototype is not MVP. MVP is not production development, and production development is not steady-state production operations. In stage 1, the goal is opportunity discovery. Departments, employees, technical teams, and leadership may all contribute ideas. The facilitator owns the process, the backlog, normalization, and artifact completeness. But stage 1 does not approve an idea as production worthy. The gate only asks whether the opportunity is documented well enough to enter structured evaluation. In stage 2, the goal is scoring, ranking, and selection. Different roles evaluate the initiative through different lenses. Management evaluates strategic value and investment priority. The department owner evaluates workflow fit and operational value. The developer evaluates technical feasibility. The data lead evaluates data readiness. Security and compliance evaluate governance exposure. Infrastructure evaluates supportability. The facilitator ensures that the record is complete. The executive sponsor ultimately decides which initiatives justify scarce prototype capacity. Then the initiative enters prototype. Prototype asks whether the proposed AI application is technically and practically possible. At this stage, the developer and data lead carry much of the truth discovery burden. They investigate tools, integrations, data, constraints, architecture direction, cost, and likely effort. The AI innovation team reviews the evidence. The project may continue, be rescoped, be held, be shelved, or advance to MVP. A promising demonstration does not create automatic approval. MVP changes the decision again. The question is no longer only, can we build this? The question becomes, can this demonstrate meaningful business value in a limited but realistic scope? The department owner must validate that the result actually matters. The developer and data lead must determine whether the solution remains credible. Security and infrastructure must determine whether the initiative is moving towards something the enterprise can responsibly own. The receiving product or application team should become involved before handoff, not after the entire process is supposedly complete. This leads to one of the most important rules in the operating model. Prototype and MVP generate evidence. They do not create automatic approval. Every stage ends with another decision. Every learning cycle updates assumptions. Every material discovery can change the initiative's rank. And every increase in investment should require stronger evidence. That is how the enterprise AI operating model prevents enthusiasm from becoming an unlimited commitment. A formal blocker is not the same thing as a personal objection. That distinction matters. In enterprise AI, some concerns should influence scoring. Other concerns should stop advancement until the issue is resolved, remediated, or formally overridden. The facilitator can block process readiness. If the gate packet is incomplete, scorecards were skipped, required evidence is missing, decisions were not logged, or ownership is unclear, the facilitator can stop the process from pretending the initiative is ready. But the facilitator should not block the business strategy simply because they personally dislike the priority. The developer or solution architect can identify a technical stop condition. That may include technical impossibility, an architecturally unacceptable approach, a critical integration assumption that does not hold, or a tool that cannot meet the required capability. The DBA or data lead can identify a data stop condition. The required data may not exist. It may be unusable at reasonable cost. It may be legally inaccessible. Its quality may be too poor for the expected value, or the preparation burden may destroy the business case. Security, legal, and compliance can identify a governance stop condition. The initiative may violate policy. It may use prohibited data. It may create unacceptable privacy or regulatory exposure, or it may be unable to satisfy a mandatory control. The receiving product or application team can reject handoff. This is one of the most important blocker rights in the entire operating model. A production team should not be forced to inherit a poorly documented MVP with unresolved architecture, data, security, support, or ownership assumptions. Successful MVP evidence does not eliminate the receiving team's operational reality. Without formal blocker rules, organizations usually fall into one of two bad patterns. Either every concern becomes a political veto and the initiative slows to a crawl, or serious risks are ignored because nobody wants to be labeled as the person blocking innovation. Both patterns are damaging. A formal blocker creates a disciplined middle path. The person raising the blocker should document: what is the condition? Why does it prevent advancement? What evidence supports it? What would need to change? Can it be remediated? Does it require an executive override? Who owns the next action? The practical principle is this: a blocker should create clarity, not mystery. If the initiative cannot proceed, the organization should know why. If leadership chooses to override the blocker, the unresolved risk should remain visible and owned. That is mature enterprise governance. Executives can override. That is organizational reality. Senior leaders own strategy, funding, urgency, and business trade-offs. Sometimes they may decide that an initiative should proceed even though a technical, data, security, or operational concern remains. The question is not whether overrides should exist. The question is whether they are visible. A silent override is dangerous. It allows an initiative to move forward while pretending the objection was resolved. The security concern disappears from the official conversation, the data issue becomes someone else's future problem, the architecture objection becomes technical debt, the support burden becomes an operation surprise, the receiving team inherits risk that was never formally accepted. That is not responsible leadership. That is hidden risk transfer. A documented override is different. A documented override says, we heard the objection, we understand the unresolved risk, we are proceeding for a stated business reason. This person owns the residual risk. These mitigation actions are required, and we will revisit the decision on this date. That changes the nature of the decision. It does not guarantee that leadership is correct. It makes the decision explicit, accountable, and reviewable. An override record should capture at least the business rationale, the decision authority, who objected, the basis of the objection, the unresolved risk, the required mitigation, the named residual risk owner, the review date, and the conditions that would cause the decision to be reconsidered. This is especially important in AI because the risks are often cross-functional. An initiative may be valuable to one department, but risky for compliance. It may be strategically important, but expensive to support. It may be technically feasible, but dependent on weak data. It may work in Azure or AWS while still creating data boundary concerns that the enterprise has not accepted. If leadership proceeds despite those concerns, the organization needs a record. The strongest line in the governance model is this: the team owns the risk usually means nobody owns the risk. Residual risk needs a named owner, not a committee, not a department in general, not IT. A person or accountable organizational role must accept responsibility for the unresolved exposure. Overrides are allowed. Silent overrides are not. If AI initiatives are moving forward without clear decision rights, the organization should not confuse activity with maturity. It may have a backlog, it may have meetings, it may have an AI committee, it may have vendor demonstrations, it may have a few prototypes, it may even have executive sponsorship. But if nobody knows who approves advancement, who can identify a formal blocker, who can authorize an override, who records the decision, and who accepts ownership at handoff, the organization does not yet have a complete enterprise AI operating model. A practical operating model assessment should ask direct questions. Who owns Stage 1 opportunity discovery? Who decides whether an opportunity is documented well enough to enter structured evaluation? Who evaluates business value, technical feasibility, data readiness, governance exposure, and supportability? Who decides which initiatives receive scarce prototype capacity? Who determines whether prototype evidence is strong enough to justify MVP? Who validates whether the MVP demonstrates real business value? Who can identify a technical, data, security, or governance stop condition? Who can authorize an override? Who owns the residual risk? Who can reject handoff? Who accepts ownership for production development? Those questions should not receive different answers in every meeting. The purpose of decision rights is not to make AI slower. The purpose is to remove avoidable ambiguity. When authority is clear, teams can move faster because they understand how decisions will be made. Business owners know what evidence they must provide. Developers know when technical feasibility becomes decisive. DBAs know when data concerns must be raised. Security knows where formal blockers enter the process. Project managers know which artifacts and approvals are required. Receiving teams know when they become part of the decision and when ownership transfers. Without that clarity, organizations get politics with a backlog. Projects move because someone powerful wants them. Projects stall because someone important objects. Projects restart because nobody documented the original reason. Weak initiatives survive. Strong initiatives wait. Receiving teams inherit unfinished experiments, and the organization blames the AI tools when the real failure is governance. The fix is straightforward, but it is not casual. Define the roles. Define the stages. Define the gates. Define who contributes evidence. Define who evaluates each dimension. Define who approves advancement. Define who can raise a formal blocker. Define who can authorize an override. Define how residual risk is owned. Define when handoff changes ownership. A RACI-style matrix can document those assignments. But the larger system is the enterprise AI operating model. The final takeaway is this: enterprise AI needs accountable decisions, not just shared opinions. Enterprise AI ownership must be designed across business, technical, data, security, infrastructure, project, and production teams. The organizations that define decision rights, stage-specific authority, formal blockers, visible executive overrides, and explicit handoff ownership will avoid a great deal of expensive confusion. The enterprise AI operating model provides the structure for making those decisions consistently, from opportunity discovery through prototype, MVP, and production development handoff. You can explore more practical enterprise AI resources at ain.net.com. Thanks for watching.